Welcome, friends. My name is Silas Ollegario, and I'm the host of Think Onward, a podcast about books, studies, productivity, and lifestyle now, after the intro. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Think Onward. This is Silas speaking, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you decided to tune in from wherever it is that you're listening from. And today I have a very good and interesting episode to you. I'm going to be talking to a good friend of mine. The reason this episode is different is because I forgot press recording in the beginning of our conversation. So you actually miss... I actually missed the first 5 minutes when he was introducing himself. But just so you understand who he is, Joey is a great friend of mine. We've known each other for 13 years already. And he lives in Tokyo, Japan, for almost 5. So we started this conversation by talking all this thing of learning Japanese and all his difficulty on doing that. And anyway, I just hope you guys enjoy it and that you have a great time listening to this. And everyone, this is Joey.
This fantasy language to me, that's what it was. It was like a fantasy language because I learned the alphabet, I think, about like 4 or 5 times before I actually came here because I would learn it, and it's something that was virtually not used in my regular day life in Brazil. So I just eventually forget it, and then I'm kind of like, no, man, I got to learn it again. I learned it maybe 4 or 5 times. That's how many times I forgot it. So by the time I got here, I think like my level of Japanese was like El-chan, you know? Like arigato, sayonara.
I don't. What's the word, El-chan?
Yeah, El-chan. Yeah, you know El-chan. Every Brazilian has a degree in El-chan Japanese.
My God. I thought it was speaking like... I thought you were saying... You sounded like El-chan. What is El-chan? Because it sounded to me like we're speaking Japanese. Okay, yes. El-chan, okay.
Yeah, every Brazilian has a degree in El-chan Japanese.
Now I got your... Oh my God, Joe, you went very far, the reference. Because they had a song. Arigatos. Oh my goodness. You just went too far.
But tell me it's not true. Every Brazilian knows that much Japanese.
Yes.
That song is like embedded in our genes.
Yeah. No, I'm not gonna even sing it in my head because I don't want to be stuck with this. Yeah, I had actually one Japanese class back in 2009, I think. I was training a teacher because I was an English teacher back then, and I was training a new Japanese teacher.
Yeah.
She was Japanese.
Yeah.
And she was actually correcting the books because the books they had so many mistakes.
Oh.
But I remember the watashi wa.
Oh.
Something like this. Watashi wa pano nomimasu.
Whoa.
I remember.
Wow.
This sentence I never forgot.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Good? No, come on, man. Don't make fun of me.
No. It is because the syntax is well. I mean, you said pan, right, which is bread, and nomimasu is drink, so you don't drink bread.
So what's the word for what's eating?
I think it's tabemasu.
Tabemasu.
Yeah.
Watashi wa pan no tabemasu.
Pan ga tabemasu. I think pan o tabemasu actually.
Oh my God! See. Yeah, it's a language that...
But the watashi wa is
a little bit difficult.
Yeah, it's used for a lot of stuff that you are going to do, that you are, whatever,
Yeah, because this school I used to work for, the first lessons were always like this. I, and then the verb. And I remember this, I drink, then I eat, and I like, and then I play, and etc.
Yeah.
So it starts from there. Then because you feel like you can communicate using these very simple verbs. So I remember lesson 1, Japanese is watashi wa.
Yeah.
and then had the rest of it. I remember the word sakana, which is fish, right?
Yo, you
Thank you
kept
so
it
much,
in.
Japanese.
You're above the El Chum vibes already.
El Chinese started it.
You've overcome.
Dude, okay, but I know it's an amazing country, but I just know it's amazing because of what we watch on TV or movies. But tell us actually about the decision of moving there. I mean, what made you decide to move from Brazil? Because you lived in America for such a long time, and then moving to Japan. Where this decision came from?
Uh, well, honestly, I think the decision came with the opportunity in a way, because it's like there were a lot of signs leading up to the moment where the opening presented itself. You know what I mean? Like ultimately, the idea of a life in Japan itself began manifesting itself earlier than the opportunity.
Okay, this I can.
Earlier than the opportunity to make the decision itself. So step by step of the way, there were certain aspects of the life here that appealed to me throughout my journey. That helped me confirm that I was actually interested in living these things, one by one.
And can you give us examples of this?
Just there was a feeling, I think, a lot of the times, of feeling like I didn't really fit in culturally or artistically in a lot of ways. And it wasn't like a one event thing. It was a series of events that were like appearing, and those things, I think, kind of like built up to the point where Japan became like this answer, this kind of like conclusion. Therefore, these things, I identify with that, I identify with that point, these things. So I felt like ultimately the final draw was just the fact that it would be a fresh start in a culture where where a lot didn't feel like decided for me before I actually began here, because it was just outside of my spec of everything I knew. So I felt it was like as blank as it could get for me. Okay. And I just wanted that chance to kind of be in a place, start a life somewhere where I could actually elaborate and build in a way where I wasn't expected in a lot of ways to be a certain person or to do things a certain way because of where I was from or who I was. So I knew nobody here. I had no real cultural references, like family-wise, no Japanese in my blood, no Japanese anywhere in my line, both of my parents and sides. It was just like, to me, it was very much like that David Bowie song, "Is There Life on Mars?" He felt like he didn't fit. Right, in a way. So he's like, maybe in Mars he could. And Japan was my Mars in a way. It's the furthest place I could go.
And after almost 5 years there, do you think Japan was or is your Mars?
It definitely has been. And I never expected Mars to be perfect, just to make that very clear. I don't think there's such a thing. But it certainly has been. I think that's why I'm still here, because there was no shortage of reasons, of moments where I thought, I'm packing my things and going back, reasons to do that. Happened so many times. I thought, well, this is it. Can't put up with this anymore. I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it. Japan is very much not a perfect place. It's just different problems. It's just that compared to the problems that I used to have, these ones, I'm willing to put up with them. The day I'm not ready to do that anymore, then, I have no doubts that I'll pack my things and go, maybe, I don't know, Sweden, or I'll meet you in Canada. I don't know.
The funny and the good thing, and two things. As a friend, I know we met each other in 2008, so it's been 13 years. So as a friend, it's a long time, right? But as a friend, it's very. I feel very happy to hear you say this kind of stuff. And this statement was, seriously, dude, you just made my day, because what you expect from people you love is that they are happy. And I hate to think that people are just happy if they live in a certain place, if they have certain jobs, if they have a certain car, or, this kind of stuff. So when you hear a friend saying that he's happy with the decision he made, and in case he, and I like this idea that if you sometime, you and Gil, myself, and we have other friends who live in some different countries, the day we decide that place doesn't fit us anymore, you just move.
Yeah.
Like, I like the idea that I belong to the planet, Although I was born in the southern state of Brazil, it doesn't mean that I have to die in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's very nice hearing this.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. Like, hey, I mean, why would you put yourself through that, right? Like, you're not happy where you are, like, so why would you stay there? I mean, it's like, I don't have that image even with Japan. I mean, even when Japan isn't like doing it for me, I don't have to continue here. I don't have to stay here. I'm still here, like, by choice. I'm not obligated to be here, and that's the reason why I left Brazil in the first place, and I had my time in America. And there was a point, believe it or not, a lot of people in Japan even were kind of like, oh, really? But wow, but America, California, it's so awesome, and this and that and this and that. There was a point where I wasn't really doing it for me. It's great, but it just the kind of, you got to pick your battles. The kind of battles that they had there were just not, for me.
When we talk about Canada to people, everybody says, "Oh my, but it's so cold." Yeah, and I know it's cold, but look, the cold weather is just part of life for so many people in so many countries in the world. And I don't think you are unhappy just because you live in a cold weather. Just as we are not unhappy just because Brazil is hot, It makes no sense putting this kind of stuff as a way of...
Yeah, people sprinkle these very selective ideas of like, oh, but this place is that, like, what was it that I heard a lot? And it's a very good point. People are like, oh, but what about the earthquakes, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right, yeah. I mean, I've been welcomed with a fair shake in my first 3 days here when I got, I remember.
Your first 3 days? Oh my God, I had no idea.
Sorry. That's actually a mistake on my part. I think the first night, my first night here, I woke up like, I think 3, 4 in the morning, just shaking my bed. I was so jet lagged that I thought, is this what an earthquake is? And then I just thought, well, it's not like I can do anything. So I just
yeah. What are you gonna do, right?
So I just fell back. I was so jet lagged, I couldn't tell what it was, but it was just like everything like.
But tell me about this specifically. Is it that scary? Have you gotten a big one? Because I can remember for the last 4 years, Japan, if you guys had a big one. Because as I recollect, the last big one was in 2010, right?
2011, yeah.
11, yeah. In Fukushima or something like this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But is it that scary? Like, how do you feel during an earthquake?
Yeah, I don't remember for sure what was the degree. of that earthquake. I know it was pretty strong and, pretty, it was like nationwide nearly. I've had I think like a 7, which is pretty high. Usually like the small ones that we don't care, that kind of shakes things up, but we're kind of like, it's kind of like, I don't know, it just happens. It's kind of like a 2 or a 3. Everyone's kind of like, ooh, but like a 6 or a 7 is kind of like, hold on,
Take cover.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, you don't get used to it. You don't get used to it because you'll have a long period without it, and then when it happens again, it gets you off guard, and it really depends where you're at when it happens. And I remember once, I was in a record shop, and I went to the bathroom, and I just taken a piss, and I was washing my hands, and there was a guy using the loo, He was in the actual toilet when it started. His screams, I will never forget.
That is terrible.
Yo, you could see the walls going diagonal, bro. That's how much it shook. It's funny now, but I mean, what was happening, the earthquake itself wasn't funny. I cannot deny the guy taking a crap while it was happening was very funny.
I was going to say now, holy shit, but it sounded like Chuchi.
Yeah, he delivered. He was, yeah, and you could tell he was like grabbing like against the walls to kind of like support himself, but he would like hit it like.
God, I cannot imagine.
Oh yeah, that was not cool. I wouldn't like to be in an elevator when it happens, and especially if you're in an older building, right? You could have a lot of like 70s, 60s buildings here. Those buildings, they have still great support, very safe. Like the engineering that goes into the architecture here is like, state of the art. But shaking is part of the mechanism to actually like relief, so there's not a lot of like resistance against the shock waves, right? So it shakes, it moves with the shock waves.
Yes.
But when you're inside, that kind of like moving, if you're like, I don't know, like 7th, 8th floor even, it's very uncomfortable. I remember being in the last apartment I used to live, like I was leaving the shower when one happened, and I remember the door was here, and I was passing through the door, and suddenly the door was here.
When you move a foot to the side, it's just not good. Something bad happened when the wall moved, shifted. No, that's just, it's too crazy to imagine.
Yeah, probably I'm the one that shifted, right? Because the the door came back.
Yes.
But the walls do like go diagonally like that, like it moves like a freaking Lego house or something. It's just a very weird thing, man.
Is there a season for this that, for example, it can happen like we have the hurricane season in Caribbean? Do you have this kind of stuff there? Do you actually know when you're supposed to expect something like this, or you don't?
No, not really. Some people have theories. They think it happens more in winter or like late winter, beginning of, spring or something. But yeah, there's no real connection.
What's the name of the city you live at? Do you live in Tokyo?
Yeah, I live in Tokyo. A train away from that, you probably remember Tokyo Drift, where there's that big crossing.
Really? You live close there?
Yeah, pretty close, I guess. Mm-hmm. It's not just the same like anymore, but we'll get to that later, I guess. Just Corona, a lot of things that made Tokyo. Just it's kind of like now you're just paying the expensive prices of a very cosmopolitan city, because the events, the opportunities, the stuff, it's not the same, But anyways, I'm still what I do here is what's called a salary man. That's what I am here, right? Just basically a company employee. It's mostly like office related work, though I'm mostly focused in the marketing and publicity departments. So those kind of like salary man jobs here, they're kind of like the one would say like kind of like the backbone of society. I mean, like the regular guys going, you know, putting on their suits every day and just heading out to the office and doing like crazy hours, and you know, after that hitting, you know, the karaoke bars and drinking parties and have to go out to drink with your boss, and that whole culture. That's the salary man culture. And
do you get to do this kind of stuff?
used to, right? Now we're just working a lot from home.
When because this is a very nice topic, because we normally we hear about the amount of work you put on there in Asia, and how people just have this in mind that they have to work and work a lot and work long hours. And how is that for you? How was this difference, you know, because you shifted from working in Brazil, then working in America, and now working in Japan? How is this difference?
It's different from the way they perceive the importance and the importance of how to work. Now everyone kind of like has a clear understanding of the importance of work itself, right? Any country, but there's a big importance giving in the way of and how you work here. So a couple of I remember reading a couple of polls like some time ago, talking about like worldwide workers' productivity, and it's kind of unbelievable that Japanese corporate productivity is not that high, not amongst the highest. They work a lot of they work a lot of hours, but the efficiency isn't really there compared to a couple of other countries. Because it's a lot about just that spirit of showing, of going through the pains and just putting in the crazy hours, and just lack of sleep, even if you're not productive anymore. So it's kind of like just showing like, yeah, I'm giving my life, I'm burning myself away for this company. That's how much, you know, like I'm thankful for you guys hiring me, right? So now recent years, I think there's been a slight shift in that mentality. More traditional older Japanese companies, they're still stuck in that kind of like pre-bubble mindset. I'm pretty sure you heard of the bubble, like at the end of the 80s here in Japan, that, you know, sent the economy at like 180 degrees. But a lot of that mentality survived a lot on the older generation, which are heading a lot of like the more traditional, bigger companies here. And they really they take a while to change. They're not so comfortable with the idea of changing. So, you know, a lot of companies are still, you know, fax based and and stamp based. They use the actual stamp for stuff. Corona kind of like put a lot of people on an arm lock right now. It's kind of like, yo, you're gonna have to start trying digital stamps. You're gonna have to start trying to figure out ways to, you know, telework, and, you know, and internet and email and stuff like that. And it sounds crazy to a lot of people who are in Japan, because what you get from like the news reports is like, oh, robots everywhere, and you know, and there's internet in the air. So,
wow, I will never think of this. You know, I had no idea, because look, today I was talking during lunch. I was talking to my wife, and I don't know when I started being so crazy about productivity. And I was actually excited about, oh my God, I want to hear from Joey what is, because he probably has like a new stuff in productivity that he learned in Japan because they're so crazy productive. And now you're telling me this, and I had no idea. I virtually had no idea. Because you always assume that if you work long hours, okay, it's part of your culture, whatever it is. But then you kind of just expect people are productive while working, and that's why they continue to work long hours. But now you're saying that not necessarily.
Yeah, I think the like Swedish companies, American companies, they've been getting it right in that sense. Like figuring out that there's like a key amount of time where somebody's like truly productive. They're on the top of their game. They're kind of like, really like that meme, kind of like radiating, flares from their from like just energy, and they're in their zone. And after that, it's kind of like, what are we even doing here? So a lot of foreign companies here, they've introduced flex time, and there's certain core hours, but you can work out your hours, and as long as you deliver, and you get your KPIs looking good,
They are productivity based.
yeah, and I think that makes a true difference, and instead of just not seeing your kids for days, and not being home for your wife, and then you get like the numbers of like people with miserable marriages here is just skyrocketing because again, all of this pre-corona, now everything's kind of like falling in very different places right now, but it's crazy that it took all of this for people to start realizing and maybe kind of rethinking certain things that were kind of like obvious. You could see that before if you just crunched a couple of numbers before, but they have a hard time detaching. Culture is a very important thing here. You can imagine, like, to a point where people who don't consider themselves religious do religious things because it's ingrained in the Japanese culture. So if you're Japanese, you do these things, not necessarily because you believe in those things, but because you are Japanese.
Wow.
Yeah.
See?
See, one other thing I had no idea, because again, you see these people and you think, okay, they're doing this because of their religion. I would never think that people without a religion that will do the same things just because of just for the sake of the culture.
People very non-religious. It's crazy. I was surprised too. People are, you hear the numbers, Buddhism and Shinto and these things, and people I've met, and I've met a lot of people, most of them, they're not religious. Not something they talk about. They don't have a regular, it's like literally New Year's, they'll go to the temple and, pray for good fortune for the year. There are some religious people, but they're very non-religious compared to any other country I've been.
Okay, but is this like a young people thing, or are the older people like this too, doing stuff just for the sake of culture?
Yeah, it's very well. The older people, maybe some of them would still practice somewhat more religion, but really not too much, and it's not something obvious and clear, and it's not something regular like being a Christian or like Catholic or whatever. I mean, whatever you be. But there is definitely a trend that younger kids are even less, maybe as a trend, again, in a cultural sense, because that's what Japanese people do. New Year's, you'll go to the temple and pray for good fortune, but you do it because it's a cultural thing to do, not because it's a religious thing that you do because you believe in it. People don't talk about, people don't talk about Buddha or his teachings, or especially young people, very non-religious. Their religion is idol culture. I think artists. That's what they worship here. The media.
It's funny because I got this question. Was, of course, we're talking about this, but I had in mind something that your sister She asked me, Silas, please ask Joey about the elderly. He's got something to talk to you about elderly, and and she said nothing else. That's it. I swear. Hey, dude, you know your sister better than I do, and she just did. Silas, please, you're gonna talk to Joey and ask him about the elderly. So that's it. That's me asking you about the elderly, because we talk about now religion, but forget religion specifically. Talk about the elderly, please. I'm curious.
I'm not entirely sure what she's trying to get out of me with that question, but maybe she's, I don't know, trying to, I don't know, start some kind of online, movement. I don't know. Well, it is known that Japan has like maybe worldwide one of the oldest, populations in the world, I think. Very few babies born. And people don't die. What do you think happens after a while?
People don't die. That is just wrong. You know that's wrong.
Yeah.
People live forever here in Japan.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a problem to go into like a question like a topic like this, because it's gonna sound wrong. It's gonna sound wrong any way I go about it. But truth is that people don't really die, and look, we're all gonna get there. We're all gonna get there, and we don't really know when. But the point is that it just never really happened for a lot of people here. And they're still hanging around for like the longest time.
Oh my god, it's just wrong, dude.
And no, look, and it's not up to me. It's not up to me. I can't do anything.
That's just terrible.
But look, we can't support it anymore. It's like the amount of work that it takes for one young person to support like the pension of like, I don't know, 30 old people, what the number is anymore, because nobody goes,
People just keep living. No, but look.
I mean, look, every old person is somebody's grandfather, grandmother. So I have tremendous respect for those people.
No, of course.
I just wish they didn't leave home during commuting hours.
Let's see. What is your complaint?
People take the bus to go to the park, feed pigeons.
Do you do that after like commuting hours? Because look, it's Tokyo. Even if they're not around, it's still a lot of people. It's like a beehive. This place, it's crazy how many.
Yeah, that's a good thing, because Tokyo always seems packed. Is it true or just movies?
It is. It's crazy packed. This place is crazy packed. Some people started moving, kind of outside. Now with Corona, they kind of like, they had the luxury of doing that, some structure. So they're kind of like moving out, because kind of like, well, Tokyo just isn't the same anymore. What am I even doing here? Just, in this crowded place. Very little space. You pay a lot of money for the little space that you have. And the opportunities, the events just aren't the same. The convenience just isn't the same. It still is very convenient. It still is a very cool place. I absolutely love Tokyo. Very happy to be here. But is it the same as it was before Corona? It isn't. I think no place is, really. But the difference is that we pay, I think, a fair price to be here in this place of all other places that we could be,
And don't you guys have like cities around Tokyo that people go just to live because it's cheaper? Because it happens in so many bigger cities. For example, we talked to Gil 2 weeks ago, and he lives in Los Angeles. But we know that LA, you have Altadena and Pasadena. So if it's too expensive to stay in LA, then you could move like around. People don't in Tokyo. How is this going? Because why don't people move to the cities
People
there.
do commute from outside of Tokyo into Tokyo to work and then, move out. Especially people that want to, want to do the whole, 2 kids, Labrador, big house kind of plan, So they'll move outside of Tokyo because having a house here maybe isn't the best idea. But then again, I mean, living within Tokyo comes with its benefits, of shorter commuting hours, and it's just very convenient.
Mm-hmm. In the beginning of our conversation, you talked about moving to different places and etc. Do you see yourself living in Japan, just not in Tokyo?
Yeah, it's a pretty good question. Actually, I've thought about it quite often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the city?
I thought about you've probably heard of Yokohama.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So Yokohama is in a prefecture called Kanagawa, which is below Tokyo.
Okay.
It's actually not that far from where I'm at right now. So a lot of people do commute from there, and it's a lot wider, and and
Not packed.
yeah, it's not as packed, and and you can actually, it's comfortable to drive around there. Tokyo, why would you want to have a car here? Parking is hell. Driving here is, you it's very hard to move, and yeah, I mean, for a lot of things. And I mean, you really don't need that additional expense, considering, you got trains everywhere to go everywhere. So you really don't need it. So public transportation, no complaints. Tokyo is like amazing. So, but there's going to be a point where, you can't really bring your Labrador with the 2 kids, in the train. So
it's very funny, dude, because in January 2020, Rebecca and we were thinking, okay, maybe in a couple of months we will be in Canada already. So let's start figuring out where we want to go for summer. And then we had the idea, we could go to the Olympics. In Tokyo, great, because we can visit Japan, Tokyo. And we was so organized in this that we were seeing which kind of sports. For example, I follow surfing, so oh my God, we can go there and check the surfers that I like because they're gonna be there in the Olympics. This was January 2020, so 13 months ago. And now, then the thing happened, COVID happened, and everybody's plans were canceled, or somehow changed. And this is something interesting because we like making plans. Even people who claim they don't make plans, not making a plan nowadays is actually making a plan. So how is that for you? Because you live in one of the most amazing cities in the world, crazy, always packed, full of events and etc. places to visit. Do you have any plans for 2021, maybe 2022?
Yeah.
For Tokyo? Let me start with this part of the world first. For Tokyo, for your life there, what are your plans?
Well, yeah, exactly as you said, like yourself, so many other people you knew had all these plans, and everything just suddenly just switched into this state that nobody really knew what to make out of it. So you can't help but bear the question again, like, so what if am I just going to keep on making plans? What kind of assurance do I have that these are actually going to go through anyway? Because I just remember so vividly, man, like 2019, it's New Year's, like Happy New Year, everybody's like hugging themselves, like bring it on, yes. 2020, and 2020 did bring it on, and nobody was ready. So
you brought it too hard.
Yeah, way too hard. Like yo, chill, bro. But so you can't help but kind of instead of making plans, just sketch something like that.
Okay, yeah.
So you'll kind of like, maybe be in Tokyo for a bit longer, and then start thinking about other places. Of course, everything moves with your ideas of a job, of a relationship, of all of those things.
But
Let me start small. For example, soon you're gonna have summer. Okay, in June, July comes, and maybe you have vacation. The problem is we don't know how it's gonna be during summer, COVID. If we're gonna have lockdown, if people are gonna be vaccinated enough. So I mean these kind of plans because, again, I was making plans today with my wife because I probably have to be. Now it's different. Now I have to be in Canada by the end of August. However, the government of Canada is changing things because international students or new immigrants or whatever, to arrive in Canada, you have certain rules that you have to follow. But these rules are changing every 10 days. So even making plans just to go there, to the city. And if you want to go to the beach, how are you going to do that? Do you have plans like this? I mean, small plans. Do you make them in a way?
For bigger plans, definitely that switch is something that it's just, you just got to bring it to account at this point. I mean, that's what happened with my plans to go to Brazil. I had plans to be there last year, actually. And, those didn't work out. I actually even bought a ticket. And
wow.
Yeah, that's how bad it was. It was going to be literally my first time back there since I've moved here.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen, my family and, the longest time that you probably know that, they came over around 3 years ago. That was the last time I saw them, which really helps. I mean, if they came here regularly, it wouldn't be such I don't think I'd feel that. I don't really miss Brazil per se. Let's say I miss the people.
Understand.
I miss the people. So if the people just came over, I'd be fine. I could be 10 years not going back. That's fine for me. There are things that I like from Brazil, though. Let me just say that's not like I hate Brazil, but it's such a long trip. It's unbelievably long.
How many hours?
It is
30 something.
It's like maybe like 26, but that's not considering like
the jet lag,
like layover and those things at an airport. So it takes much longer than that, to an extent that I remember like halfway, because I flew here before from the United States, right? It was long, but it's all right. It's bearable.
almost straight.
Yeah, from Brazil, it's just not. It's just not. Like when you're halfway there, you just start thinking it's over. I'm gonna be here forever.
The problem of flying from Brazil is that your halfway is United States. And that if you think that this is halfway, oh my God, I have to go to São Paulo, then United States, then Toronto sometimes, in Vancouver. I think your sister's flight was something like this, something crazy like this.
Yeah, but I flew through Europe, bro, and across mainland China.
What? No.
So literally, it was like morning like 3 times in one day for me. That's how it felt. I remember like I try to sleep for like, and then I sleep for 2 hours, and they're like, wakey, wakey, breakfast time. And then I'm kind of like, okay, fine. And then like 4 hours later was like breakfast time again. And I was like, and then I was just like out of my mind. I thought it was like having like a meltdown or something. Like I opened up the shade and it's like morning again.
These looped.
And I'm kind of like, I'm stuck. It's the Twilight Zone, I'm gonna be here forever. I'm never gonna arrive. And I just like literally I had to stop on
You're already laughing and I laugh.
I had to stop on France, and from there I was supposed to take a flight to China and China Tokyo, right?
Okay.
And then I just remember halfway, because by the time I was in France, like 2 mornings I think already happened. I don't know. I'm not sure because of the time that I left, but like when I left from the airport there, and I think we were flying over Russia actually. And I looked at the clock, and there was still all this time left. I learned a very important lesson that day, and I used that until this day.
Here we go, folks.
Yeah. Nothing is forever. I have to arrive someday. Okay. It sounds very simple, but it's just this thought that it really did keep me, because I thought it might take however it might take, but I am not going to be on this airplane because we're not going in circles. I'm not going to be here forever.
Yes.
At some point, I'm going to have to get there. You know, I'm annoyed right now. I'm tired. I'm very tired. I'm like tripping the hell out of, my brain right now. But I have to get there someday. So I will be there eventually. That is a fact. I will get there at the airport of Tokyo. So just wait it out. That's a sure fact. And I did. And I've been here for a long time.
So when you think about visiting Brazil, don't you think about the way back? Because look, every time I travel, I love traveling, as most people. But going back home is amazing. When I arrive home, and I get to sleep in my own bed, I just love this feeling. Going to the beach, going to wherever it is. Traveling is amazing, but arriving home is great. When you think about visiting Brazil, oh my God, you're going to have to... Okay, you got to see your friends and spend a week, 2 weeks in Brazil and miss everything you miss eating or drinking. Okay, I'm good for another 5 years. But you have to go back, dude.
Yeah.
This is kind of crazy because, okay, just because you were born in Brazil.
Yeah.
I have to say, you're not Brazilian anymore. No, 4 years in another place. What I mean is like, this is not your home. Going to Brazil is not going home. Going to Tokyo is going home. So this is crazy. Then you have to go to, I don't know, maybe, over 30 hours traveling by plane.
Yeah, I mean,
go back home.
Just answering your question the way you put it in the beginning of what you were saying. Do you think about, the way back? No, the answer is no. I don't think about it because maybe if I think about it, I just won't go. I just won't go. If anybody's hearing this podcast and you work in the elevator industry and I don't know, you'd be willing to start a project where we can just go.
I just got one.
You could just take an elevator from Japan to Brazil, and then just back.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
If anybody wants to get started on that, I'm greatly appreciative of the initiative.
Dude, if anyone is getting started on that, it's you, the Japanese. Let's be honest. This project is not started in Brazil.
Yeah, there's this joke, actually. There's this guy here, this comedian here, actually went on television. He had this, special where there was this bit that he did, he ran into, this very big hole on the ground, and he was like, what the heck is this? And the first thing he would shout down the hole was like, hello, everybody in Brazil. Can you hear me? Something like that. Yeah, people loved hearing. Every time I say I'm from Brazil, everyone's like, "Oh, do you know that comedian? Like the guy that shouts down,
nice.
The people from Brazil."
It's so nice.
Yeah, like the Olympics, right? They did that little bit, right? The end of the Olympics in Brazil, where the prime minister from here. Remember. Yeah, they did this montage of Super Mario going through the pipes.
Yes, I recall that.
And then he goes in the pipe from Japan, and then he shows up in the pipe in Brazil, and then he takes off the hat. He's the prime minister.
It was very nice.
Oh my God, 2016. Wow, already 5 years.
Wow.
The Olympics were supposed to be here last year, and whatever happened. Everyone is kind of has a very anti-Olympic feeling right now around here.
Really?
Yeah, understandably. It just doesn't feel
Due
right.
to
It doesn't feel right, but the government's still like pushing it very strong.
I do have a question. Do you know how many people have died of COVID there in Japan?
I don't have the numbers, but it's not that crazy. For some reason, I think maybe like the natural cultural distance people have with each other kind of makes it easier. People naturally don't crave so much touch interaction. Handshakes aren't a common thing here. People don't really handshake. People don't hug. Couples don't kiss in public. Even so, we have a very anti-touch culture already, even before Corona. So I think that helps to a certain extent. People are pretty diligent with masks, and at almost every shop I've been here throughout the state of emergency, they've got alcohol.
That's great.
Everywhere. So I think that, and again, just the old people, they're very tough. So.
There we go.
Back to,
Dude, I like talking about productivity and work and living in a different country, but I also like talking about books. It's something that I really enjoy about reading. Have you been reading something interesting? Maybe something different, something I haven't heard, maybe a Japanese author or whatever it is. Have you been reading something nice lately? Something you want to share?
I've read 2 things recently. I don't think any of them are worthwhile sharing.
Don't you hate it? Look, some people I'm sorry to interrupt you, but some people start books, very productive people, they start reading books, and if they don't like it, they just stop it because they are not going to waste time in books they don't enjoy. But I find it very difficult. I remember it's a very big story, very famous book from Fitzgerald. I hate The Great Gatsby. I just hate it. I love the movie because I like DiCaprio. But the book was awful. Dude, I'm serious. And I had to go through, and I remember it took me months. I'm not kidding. It took me months to finish the reading. Oh my God, why am I reading this? I hate it, but I finished. So don't you hate when the book that you're reading, it's not that interesting, but you have to finish? Are you like me?
Yeah, it's not the case with the 2 books that I've read recently. There was a 3rd book before that I read that actually got me pretty irritated, and yet I finished it, but very angrily.
Okay.
Kind of like reading the words like a 4-year-old, kind of like, this, done. I hated it. It's kind of like, there were some interesting points, but I started getting kind of like irritated at the author. It was a book called In Praise of Darkness. It's a Japanese book. Original title, Ine Rai-san, I think. And it's a very old book, which is kind of like an essay almost of an artisan who is he's giving contrast between Western perspective of art and the Japanese perspective, how Japanese are appreciative of certain defects and colors that aren't so sparkly, so shiny, so glamorously, and at that time I think the West was a lot about crystals and silver and stuff like that, and then he goes from table silverware to curtains to glasses and cups and household furniture, through all of these things, and he compares even like how a bathroom is set up, and he just gives this concept of like how there's an appreciation for the darker and shadowy and murky setting in Japanese aesthetic point of view. And I was like, okay, this is cool, this is interesting. I'm kind of like reading about all these, getting these different perspectives, right, on creation and idea. and then he just spiraled down throughout in this section of the book of kind of like, well, and then the Americans, or like the Western people, they created, what was it? I gotta remember. Let's just say, for the sake of, the example, like, I don't know, the phone, whatever. And it's got that design that it's like this, right? It's like kind of like a little, it's like a little hook.
Crooked.
It's like it's crooked, like it's got like a little hook, right? And that's just one thing. He went on a series of things. So he started drawing this parallel of not like how it was different, but this thing that was created somewhere else. If for some reason the Japanese were the ones that created that, how much better would it have been? How much more interesting it could have been. And I'm kind of like, dude, get out of here. But you didn't.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, but you didn't. So what are you going on about? And then like all these pages about that, then I'm kind of like, yeah, man, you know what? Screw this guy. I was kind of like, yeah. So I just got like irritated at the guy. Like everything good that he said, it's kind of like, you ruined it. you blew it, dude. This guy, and I don't know why I even took him so seriously. Like, I think he's like, I don't know, from I don't know, 1920s, 1910, even before that. It's pretty old, but I mean, the mindset was still wrong. Whatever time you're from, just don't be that guy, right? What if I was the one that wrote, Best of You by the Foo Fighters? It would have been so much better, right? Why?
It makes zero sense.
Why? But I didn't. So, so.
Don't you think, just because you use a word that I like a lot, don't you think that when we have this weird shaped mindset towards things, no, let me rephrase that. Sometimes we have, or maybe most of the times, we have a weird mindset towards many subjects, and we have different opinions about different subjects and whatever. How do you feel your mindset is set, or how do you feel that your mind is set on shaping your opinions? Because you talked about a book that is over 100 years old. For some reason, if it's still going on, it's because people like the book. But you didn't. How do you think that mindset you have has affected your opinion about the book?
Right. So I make a clear distinction though. I kind of fell out of empathy for the author. I don't, because there were some points that felt just kind of like silly to me. I won't discard, the valid points and things that actually felt pretty interesting, because there were things that I really identified. I understood. I'm like, yeah, I get this, things that he was talking about. And it's just really interesting because I don't know if you're familiar with archetypes, that we inherently have a few, of things that people would say that it's a product of society itself, or of the culture that we were brought up in. But there's things that inherently they're kind of like impressions that we as humans, in spite of wherever we were, we had very similar ideas of those things, and those things shaped us as people even before we became globalized, right? So you'd have people in the Indian people in the South Americas, they had a version of the god sun, and people in Egypt had, Ra, their version of the god sun. They both could see the sun, and they both thought, it was worthy of worship. And, they had no communication, Why is it that they developed, that's just an example of an archetype of people developing in spite of their communication, but just things that imprint on us as humans. So it's very interesting to me to see, what kind of, how other societies separate from ours, how they developed, how they figured out things to do, how they turned out to be, and why was that, and how we could have been. And I'm just fascinated about that idea, you know, of how we think things could be, and how they actually end up turning out, and just the manifestation of the unpredictability of life and events, and just how much our unconsciously we're manifesting into the world, and it's taking that shape of our ideas.
And do you think that this that you're explaining to us, do you think this had to do, as an example of this, it's I can because if I am understanding what you mean, you were born in Brazil, lived in America, and now you're happy there in Japan. That's it? Is that what you mean? Because different culture, you had no connection whatsoever, and now because you have this, and I want to use the word again, because of your mindset, your mind is set in a way that you can, yeah? Is that what you mean?
It's a little like, you remember Kirby, the character Kirby from Nintendo? He sucks in his opponents.
Okay,
and he
yes,
kind
yes.
of like
Mhm.
he takes like something from that.
Mhm.
So different, different territories come with like different enemies and challenges, and a different set of things that you're able to absorb only in that level. And I feel very much like my mindset is set, like you mentioned, in a very collector kind of sense.
Mhm.
So I'm very much about collecting certain experiences and ideas in different places where I know that's maybe the only place I can get it. And it's very cool to think that being born as a blank board, the experiences that I go through life are the things that write on it, right?
Mhm.
John Locke, he came up with that idea of like tabula rasa, right? You're born as this blank board, and it's written, and you're written on through experiences. And the set of experiences is very particular. Like, I would be a very different person if I hadn't moved here. And and if I continued in the U.S., and if I hadn't moved to the U.S. and I was still in Brazil, I'd be a very other different kind of person. For better or for worse, this was the kind of thirst and curiosity that I had, to be led this way, to pick up, experiences from different contexts. But it could have happened anyway. I just wanted to make sure that I was fishing out a couple of different bowls,
But don't you think, just because you said this, don't you think that, or into what extent you think that the way you were shaped in your household, the way you're shaped where you used to go with your family and whatever, do you think this made you get that? Is that what you mean? That this experience you lived like maybe 15 years ago, these were the experiences that led you to live today in Japan?
Absolutely. I don't very, I'm sure you've lived through so much. You know what I mean when I say this. Very rarely in life, a goal or a destination is a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
Very rarely,
Mm-hmm.
That's if that was the case, you would have gotten, just married straight up to, the first girl you dated and the first person you fell in love
Yes.
with, and
Mm-hmm.
and you would still be.
It's interesting to think about.
You would have
Yeah.
been on the first job. You would have been, and a lot of people are just very set and just frustrate themselves, I think, very easily when it's like, when things don't go on that straight line. That's my goal. I want to get there. And if you run into any kind of like bumps and you got to be anywhere before that, you feel like you're failing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, it's not going right. No, I mean, this could just be part of that straight line to get where you want to get. Just because you're not there yet doesn't mean you're not going there.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really believe that. So I think that, you know, it wouldn't have worked for me to just jump straight here to this point. I wouldn't have, you know, the necessary baggage, or you have to make those connections. You have to make those pit stops before. Even F1, you know, you got to stop. You can't finish the race on, you know, on 1 gallon.
but-
So,
But also considering this, I do have one thing that it makes me think about now that you're saying. Every time someone is moving abroad, moving to a different country, especially, when eventually this person asks me what I think or what they should do for some reason, I always give the same advice. And the advice is that if you're changing I want to be very specific with countries, going to different countries. If you're moving from one country to another, I don't think it's possible. And I'm going to use the word happy. I don't think it's possible to be happy in a different country if you don't accept the things that that country has to offer you. By example, the United States, so many Brazilians go live in America. And you lived in Massachusetts, so you know this. They live they live surrounded by other Brazilians. And the language becomes a problem because they don't learn the language as they should. And because they don't learn the language, they continue to make friends only with other Brazilians. So they are living in America, but they are still having their lives, having the Brazilian way of life.
no, they're not really there. Yeah. Yeah, they're not really there if you think about it.
Yes, yeah, because it's just crazy. They just make money in dollars, and they tell their friends that they have a new iPhone, and they paid $200 for it, not the 5,000 that we pay in Brazil. And that's the only difference. They don't speak the language. They don't understand the references. I think that's the craziest thing. When we talk to someone who's been living in America for such a long time and they don't even get the jokes, all because of this. Because they are there, but they're not really there, you know? And if you had to say something to someone who is going to America, going to Canada, going to Sweden, going to wherever, going to Japan, what would you say? What would be your suggestion or your... Yeah. What would you say to this person?
Assimilation is a huge part of the process. The more resistance you put out, the more you'll suffer. The harder it's going to be to assimilate the culture, and the more you're going to suffer putting on resistance. And it comes with a price, though. The more, you know, for you to assimilate in a productive manner and ease your actual life there and actually like live like you're there instead of like in a bubble, you're going to have to give up some parts of you, of what you feel like is inherently like your culture and shapes you and your way of doing things. You're going to have to give up some of those things, right? And embrace a new way of doing things, which is kind of painful because change is not comfortable. But in the long term, if you're not thinking like it's going to be a 1 year thing for you, if it's going to be a 1 year thing for you, it's up to you, you know. You're going to be back any day, so make out of it whatever you wish. Some people, you know, they think, I got 1 year, so, you know, I'm not going to hang out with people from my country. I'm just going to really get into it, you know. And some other people, they go for the long run, but they still, you know, they're not willing to let go. They're not willing to let go and embrace something different because it's very uncomfortable to do things in a different way and in a way that at first doesn't make a lot of sense to you. But you got to remember that it makes a lot of sense to other people, so there is a sense behind it. It's just you're the one that just doesn't get it.
And when you look back after almost 5 years there in Tokyo, what did you have? What did you let go?
Ooh.
That was deep.
Ouch.
Yeah, because I imagine you're talking by experience, because that's how you sound. So now I'm curious if you're comfortable sharing, of course.
No, it's absolutely fine. It was really crazy. So a couple of years ago, Prex was out here with his wife, right? I don't.
If you're listening, Prex is how we call Gil, a friend of ours who lives in LA. He's actually Joey's cousin. Yeah, because he was here like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Shout out, bro. Love you. And I don't get a lot of visitors right here. It's not that much of a convenient trip, I guess, but
It's kind of a commute, right?
yeah, a bit, a little out of the way. But and she mentioned something, and I thought quite deeply about it, and I realized it was. So this is what happened. We were having a conversation, and we were talking about life in different places, and how long I've been here, and how I've been, and just noticing my interaction with them, with people that I knew from long ago, and how it was now. And I even felt somewhat of it when, my family was here also. My mom came out here and whatnot. And I interacted with them differently, and I know I was different. I could feel it, just my way of interacting. And it was up until the point where, Prex came out with his wife that she put it very clearly. I don't think you'll adapt yourself anymore to Brazil.
Wow.
I don't think, you'd fit there anymore. And then it hit me back again. And I was like, that much, eh? That's what I thought. That much, because I knew I changed. There's little ways, because you're with yourself every day, it's not that easy to notice. But there were little things that I noticed. For one, as soon as I got here, I remember I spoke to people on the street, like asking for like directions or suggestions for places. And I made friends with strangers, and I was just like, man, like really out there, And I'm so much more self-conscious right now in that sense. Very much, one would say, very much like a Japanese person. Right?
It's funny you say that. You know what?
Yeah.
After your sister got back from the visit there in Tokyo, she said, it's funny because Joey, he's Japanese. And she said the same thing as Nicole said. Joey's Japanese. His house is Japanese. He's not a Brazilian living in Japan. He's Japanese.
Well,
and I do have a question about this. How much of this change, was on purpose?
it's a very good question. The effort, the only part of it that was an effort was of distancing myself from the Brazilian community. All the rest happened naturally. Because just the fact that you remove yourself from that context and you put yourself in the middle of the other nationals, it just does the work for you. So it wasn't like I'm going to set up my room like this or I'm going to behave like that. We're animals of habit, and as we socialize, it just starts imprinting subconsciously, and we start just displaying those things, at some point. And I think the part that kind of sucks about it, to be very honest, is that I might seem quite Japanese to my foreign friends, people that knew me now, or people who'd see how I live from abroad. But to a Japanese person, I'm still not Japanese. And I'm not saying in a sense like I want to be Japanese, but I'm still not, I'm still not like a Japanese per se to that extent. I'm still very much a foreign with habits from the country. So in a very in a very just very very practical sense, I'm kind actually what happens is that you turn out to be kind of like lost in translation in a way, kind of in a place in between, I guess. So I have like a lot of the habits of, it's kind of like a new species or something. And I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people like me that decide to not be part of a foreign community. The people that you mentioned, the Brazilians in Massachusetts, we got them here too.
But don't you think that doing this, by acting this on purpose, it actually helped you? Because I have this, again, I said that I don't think it's possible to be happy in another country different than the one you were born if you don't decide that, okay, this is my place now. This is home. This is my country. Even if you don't want to call it your flag, but this is the place I'm in. You know, I'm 100% in. Becky and I, years ago, maybe 5 years ago, when we decided to move to Canada, we decided that some things would start happening right away. One of them, we decided to speak English at home. The two of us, we only speak English. The reason we are going to a country where people speak English. I'm going to the profession I'm going to medicine.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a doctor in a setting of emergency, for example, that he's not understanding what the patient is saying because the patient is screaming, or the nurses are saying something that you don't understand because you're not used to speak English that much? That thought scared me so much. They say, you know what? I cannot live like this.
That's scary even more than patients. Imagine you're in surgery, you ask, I don't know, you're asked for like a certain tool or something, and then, I don't know, you ask for something different, like instead of that you get like a scalp, and then you just rip off like somebody's piece or something. It's the wrong tool.
And that thought scared me so much that I told Becky, you were married back then. I said, look, this luxury is something that I don't have. I cannot be a professional in another country that does speak the language as he should. Mm-hmm. It might seem for people a very small step, but it was on purpose. Mm-hmm. And I know that when I get to Canada, this trend will continue, because now it's different. Because if I speak English at home with my wife, now I'm just going to have to speak English at home with my wife, and in college with my friends. And that was everything that I'm saying was on purpose. And I always had this in mind. I'm doing that because I decided to move to Canada. I decided that Canada will be my home. Yeah. And now that I decided this will be my home, I have to make this a livable home. I want to have Canadian friends just as I want to have Spanish friends and, I don't know, American friends and whatever it is that I'm inserted. And now that you're saying about this, that you just decided to avoid the foreigner community, and by foreigner, it's very specific, the American and the Brazilian community. I think now, looking and talking to you, I think that was essential to the way you live your life today. I don't think it would be possible. Maybe you wouldn't be able to live there for 4 years. How are you going to live in Tokyo without learning? In the beginning, you said that the language, you still don't feel like you know everything. But imagine if you were speaking English or Portuguese all the time.
Yeah.
Not having Japanese friends or people who... Man, it's just impossible. When you look like this, it is just impossible to be happy and to be in the country. You know?
I do wish I could have done something like what you're doing, though, before I came out here, eh? You know, because you'll get to Canada at such a different level than what I arrived here, and just confidence-wise with the language, and a couple of different things. So in your case, you don't have the benefit of the environment yet, so you're creating your own environment. That's why you have to do it purposely. right? In my case, I only had to make the decision of remove myself from the bubble, and I decided to let the environment work its thing because I already have Japanese all over me, all around me. Nobody speaks English, and I don't know how many miles radius around here where I am. I go to the convenience store, whatever, it's just Japanese. All the signs are in Japanese. Everything is Japanese. Nothing's written with the alphabet letters. So
I mean, this is just for me, from my mind. You're always smarter than me, and
not
I have
really,
to say,
not really.
it's so that, dude, we all know.
You're a medicine.
The thing,
Stop it. Stop it.
It's not that hard, okay? It's not that hard. But seriously, I cannot even conceive the idea of looking at something and not understanding the letters. I mean, dude, it's just too much. The position of the letters, okay, different languages, but it's not the same alphabet. Dude, how do you do it? And how do you learn it? This is my question. How do you learn this kind of stuff? How do you learn that milk says it's, I don't know, it's half and half? How do you know it's half and half? Dude, it's very scary. It's scary.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Maybe it's because, of course, there's a lot of me that was burnt out throughout the process. But
Okay.
if I went back and I was fresh, I would have done it again. If I had the level of tolerance that's left in me as a person and had to do it again, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I wouldn't do it again. I don't think I could. Like, okay, now I'm gonna do Korea. Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I know.
From here, from the point as a 30-year-old man, and considering my last 4 years of adaptation into the culture, in a culture so different of what I used to know, with a very distant safety net, right? My safety net is like miles and miles away from here if something happens to me. And that insecurity plays a big part of moving, of making a decision as big as the one I made. It's that goes into not the psychological. It does go into the psychological to some extent, but it's very much a logistical issue, right? If things go sideways, it's not it's not that I'm just like a phone call away, but I'll make a phone call, but really there's nothing that nobody can really do for me. I'm really out here kind of like on my own, watching out for myself, but with a purpose in mind. And I think the fact of if you're excited about not knowing a lot of things and the idea of getting to know these things, then going to somewhere where there's a lot to be known will always be exciting, and that leads to a very non-dull life. So that's something that will definitely keep you, in spite of challenges, excited about continuing a new context. Because of course, I try to reach out every now and then for that feeling that I had when I first arrived here, because it fades away. And when that excitement fades away, it's kind of like your marriage, right? You're going to have to find new ways to continue excited about that, to keep that thing alive. What was the thing that got you guys together in the first place, right? So that gives you like a sort of purpose, because it just isn't. And I mean, I was so happy to have my mom, my sister back here, and every time I get to have friends over, because I get to kind of sort of in a way relive the experience again through other people. That experience of like when I first arrived here, I could actually tell the smell of the country was different. Just walking around and all the signs, what do they say? Just there's this mystery, there's this thing, and it just it's exhilarating. It's crazy, but now it's just like Japan.
Yeah, transparent Coke. Okay.
Yeah. Just some robots selling, soda, and stuff like that. And but I try to bring myself back to that place of thankfulness, man, because if you can't just keep going back to that, especially us, believers, knowing like who's the one that just when everything goes when everything is said and done, everything is like in place, good days, bad days, like we trust that there's a stronger force, there's a stronger power that kind of, you know, holds us in that place. And I think God honors a lot of that, and he produces a lot of that endurance through gratefulness. Gratefulness has been like a very tough exercise. I think it's for a lot of people, but for me, it's something that I constantly have to keep bringing myself back to help me appreciate, because it's very easy to, once everything becomes fades to normality, to complain, you know, about it and just think that it's just not good enough anymore again. When, you know, over 5 years ago, I'd give like a freaking finger to live in Japan, you know. So bringing yourself back to that place is so important, dude. I mean, you're gonna Canada. Your life in Canada is gonna eventually. That's our nature. It's gonna become dull at some point, and you're gonna have to work it out in your head, because the place didn't change. It's your perception of the place that's gonna change. It's gonna be fresh, and then it's gonna get old, and then it might get boring. It's how you look at things, and yeah, I think that's a very important lesson.
Wow.
Dude, I was gonna ask you to say something to inspire us all, but you just did.
All right.
If people were inspired by the rest of our conversation, this last 5 minutes, you just did it, dude. You delivered.
Great.
Definitely. Dude, it was so incredibly nice talking to you.
I'm here, man. I missed you.
Dude, I appreciate every minute of this conversation. I miss you so much.
Yeah, dude.
Can't wait to be close again, you know, in person.
Yeah, dude.
And dude, I said in the episode with Gil, we have to do this together, the three of us.
It's gonna be crazy.
It's gonna be crazy.
We have so many stories. You guys have more stories than I do. Dude, I'm gonna be there listening and having fun. I'm gonna have the time of my life listening to you.
There's something that the three of us can talk about. You have to put a pin on it. We gotta talk about the metal mobile. The
Great. I'm gonna write it down.
Yeah,
right
Praxis metal mobile.
Yes.
Mobile.
Very good. I just write it down. That's it.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about this definitely.
I love this conversation, man. Very good. Very good.
Yeah, dude.
And that's it.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed.
to do it. I'm always down to think Onward with you.
Yes. And yes, thinking onward is it's funny, the idea of the podcast. I have friends like you who always have something to share. And two things that I'm learning. People are so worried about what they have. Oh my God, I'm not gonna create a YouTube channel. I'm not gonna create a podcast because what will people think about me, about my voice, about my whatever. And the thing is that most people don't realize other people don't care. Every one of us is just centered and focused on our own lives. So you don't care. Nobody cares. And I started this podcast with this idea, dude, nobody cares, but I care. I want to talk to my friends. I know people who have something to share to me. And I appreciate, and there's value on what you said. And I want to have this forever. And the internet's forever. So someday maybe lots of people are going to hear this, our conversation. But even if they don't, I heard it, you know? And it's printed on my mind. And the parts that I'm going to eventually forget, I can listen to it again.
Oh, yeah.
And there's value on this.
Yeah, eternalizing the moment.
Mm-hmm.
We can have other conversations in the future, but it's hardly ever going to be just like this one. So,
yeah.
Only if we change and decide which subjects we're going to talk about. For example, people don't know yet, but you're a musician. and we have music is an amazing field, so we can talk.
Dude, we have so
an
many things to talk
enormous
about.
part,
Yeah.
and it's so crazy that it's like one of it's like the biggest part of my life. And we didn't even need to go there to have like a full episode recorded.
That's amazing, right? It's great the way things work. And but Joey, before we leave, is there anything else you want to share with us, with our audience? Something that you feel like talking?
Yeah, I mean, in the note of what you were saying, which was I thought it was very beautiful, what you said right now about like the effects on people. I remembered a quote by Jim Carrey. He was saying that the most powerful currency, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, the most powerful currency we're able to own is our effect on people. That's the strongest currency that we have. How we make people feel, how we're able to, change somebody's day or perception about things. And so I really think what you're doing here is meaningful, and I think maybe a lot of people are doing it, but not everyone does it the same. There's a way that only you're able to do that nobody else is going to actually like be able to quite do like. And I think like you're the right guy to be doing what you're doing. The idea of like discussing the way you discuss, you develop your ideas. You're such a great host. I'm really excited about what you're doing, man. And I enjoyed
Thank you
every
so much,
episode you
dude.
put out so far. And 110% support.
And everybody's gonna love you and your voice. You have the perfect voice for. Seriously, you should start your own podcast. Share all these ideas, dude. I'm serious. Yes, and if I can have the honors of being invited to.
Absolutely,
to be part
dude.
of
What? You kidding? If I ever get around to doing something like that, you'll definitely be on my lineup. If you'd give
Very
me the
good.
honor.
Absolutely, dude. And thank you so much for being part of this, Joey. And you who are there at home, at work, driving, wherever you are, listening to this, thank you for being part of this podcast either. Thank you for following us and for being here every week, listening to these conversations. I hope you always get something to learn or something to put into practice. And I also hope you have a great week. And everyone, just remember to keep thinking onward. That's it. Bye.